It's on brand, dude. Check the show notes.
Oh my god, no. We gotta start. The
AJ's being frustrated, which is on brand.
All right, can we do the show? Can we start the show? I just want to start the show.
Okay, let's start.
We've started the show.
Let's start the show.
Why were we not already started?
Was that the show?
Sure, why not?
What does it mean to have a show?
Okay, tell you what, you guys start the show. You guys take it however you want to do it.
Okay, Ruch, go.
All right, guys, everyone, welcome to everything we know about impeachment.
Take two, action.
Take two, action. So I think what's happening here is AJ is very close to impeaching me and Tom from our co-authorship of the show because we're delving into topics not in the order that they are.
Richard, why do you want to talk about impeachment?
So
yes,
I'll tell you why. We are 118-ish days into the Trump presidency.
Talk about that precision. That's because you don't know when the podcast will go live.
Okay, all right. Well,
118-ish, give or take, depending on when we post.
Okay. Yeah, so, May 18th, 2017 is when we're recording this podcast.
Donald Trump is still president as of today.
I was just about to say. He's still president. So, before we go into the hardcore stuff.
Can we have another take where where we say he's not president?
Just in case?
Yeah.
We need it. Okay. AJ, we need...
As we record, Donald Trump is no longer president. He has been impeached by the United States Senate, presided over by the Chief Justice, John Roberts.
Okay, goodness. As we talk about impeachment, you'll find that the Senate doesn't impeach.
The Senate votes to convict or not, Tom?
Well, the Senate... he's been impeached by the United States Congress, right? The House impeaches him.
So why are we talking about this, Ruch? Why is this interesting?
So this is interesting because we are not that far into the Trump presidency.
About how many-ish days?
So, we're about 118 days in, and right now Mike Pence is in the middle of knifing Donald Trump. And so this is as good a time, I think, in this episode, everything we know about impeachment, for me to share what is actually going on in America, which is that Mike Pence is the Frank Underwood of our story here.
What if Mike Pence goes down with the Trump administration?
Yeah, then Ruchit will sound like an idiot.
No. Frank Underwood almost went down. He almost went down too. Frank Underwood almost went down too.
Frank Underwood isn't real, Ruchit.
What if Mike Pence and Paul Ryan both go down?
Yeah,
because there's some evidence on the Twitter rumor mills that Paul Ryan, that knew about these illicit funds from Russia.
Well, did you see the Washington Post story about the recording with...
Yes, that's what I'm referring to.
Okay, so let's talk about impeachment. What do we... So basically, it's safe to assume that every single GOP politician could be impeached sometime in the next 30 to 40 minutes. So we do need to get this episode through pretty quickly.
Should we take several takes where we go, oh my gosh, Jason Chaffetz has been impeached?
Breaking news on our podcast, Orin Hatch is now president of the United States.
Also breaking news on our podcast, Orin Hatch has been impeached.
Okay, so what are the mechanics? What are the mechanics of impeachment? What happens? Let's say Orin Hatch were to be impeached. How would that go? Okay, so Article 2, Section 4 of the United States Constitution, love it or leave it, says the president, the vice president, all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes or misdemeanors. So how do you get impeached? Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5. The House has the sole power of impeachment. Articles of impeachment are adopted by a simple majority in the House. Here's the wrinkle. The Senate then tries the impeachment proceedings. When the president is impeached, this is interesting, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court presides over the trial. Conviction requires a 2/3 vote of the full Senate. So those are the mechanics. That's what the Constitution says to do.
So to be clear, it starts in the House.
starts in the House.
Yeah.
They adopt these articles of impeachment. And so, we might in the show notes possibly include example articles of impeachment. So if you're Paul Ryan...
We've got that. We're going to do that.
No. I meant like samples.
Like for Ryan.
No.
Yeah.
Samples. So in case a House member is looking around, doesn't know what articles of impeachment look like, their staffers are listening to our show, they can be like, oh, I checked the show notes. Here's some articles of impeachment.
Yeah,
Draft
actually, Paul
form.
Ryan, do hit me up on Twitter. Do check the show notes. It's going to be good. Paul Ryan, you're going to preside over the impeachment of a same party president, so it's going to be nice. Okay.
So the House brings these. They adopt it, simple majority. Then
It's a resolution, right?
yeah. And then it goes over to the House, and then the House does
the Senate.
The Senate. And the Senate does a full-on trial.
Yeah, like a real trial with a judge. Sometimes, if the president is impeached, then the like.
Do they
Chief
use the
Justice
rules
John
of
Roberts
evidence
presides.
and stuff like that?
Oh, guys,
Yeah.
Did Schoolhouse Rock ever do a song about impeachment? I feel like we could just clip that song in.
I don't know.
I'm just a bill of impeachment.
Or
Yeah.
we could create our own song, Tom.
What's this?
I have no musical ability.
What's
Neither
this,
do
like,
I.
What's this Akhil Amar? Who did this? Who put
I
this
did
in the
this,
Google
dude.
Doc?
I did this.
Okay, so tell us about this Akhil Amar.
Yeah, who's Akhil Amar? Did he get impeached?
No. Akhil Omar is a law professor at Yale. This was more just for show notes reference for people if they want to read more about sort of the most recent impeachment that we've had in American memory, which was the impeachment
What's the
of
most recent?
the impeachment of Bill Clinton. So
Do you guys remember the impeachment of Bill Clinton?
Yeah.
I really don't.
Well, tell me about that. Yeah, I only
Well,
have vague memories.
So let's get there. Let's finish doing the background first. What can you give me impeached for?
I don't know what.
So I found the Yahoo answer for this,
which is authoritative.
And so as we said before, the Constitution says you can be impeached for treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. So someone got on the Yahoo answers. Let me open up the Yahoo. answers.yahoo.com/question/index QID. Goodness. Okay. So this is Yahoo Answers user. There's no name.
Beach bum?
Beach bum. Yahoo Answers says, can someone define, quote, high crimes and misdemeanors? And here's the best answer from It's the Big Bad Wolf. 1 decade ago wrote, it is what Bush will be impeached for. I thought that was very good. I thought that was really informative. I think that's like almost everything you need to know about impeachment. Okay. So
here's some important technical stuff. I think is so there can be treason, right? So treason is one grounds for impeachment. Now we've never impeached anybody for treason, as far as I know. Is that correct?
Can I ask you guys a question? Is it treason as it's defined in the Constitution? Because the Constitution has a very peculiar definition of treason.
I think it is.
Right? Like you just can't be out there talking to our enemies or whatever. You have to do like very specific things, and there have to be two witnesses.
There has to be two witnesses, and you have to take up arms against. We've actually talked about this in a previous show.
Yeah,
you have to
that's
actually
what I'm
take up
referring to.
arms against the United States. Do you know what show we talked about this in?
No.
Oh. Well, we'll put it in the show notes. Okay, so this is interesting. What is a high crime and misdemeanor? Nobody knows. The court has said that basically the impeachment process is a political question. The political question doctrine says that sometimes the court doesn't want to have to decide. And so things that they don't want to have to deal with, they call political questions, and they just say, Congress, you deal with it. And sort of there's a really interesting precedent on this, which is Nixon v. U.S., not Richard Nixon, but Judge Nixon. Judge Nixon was a federal judge who was imprisoned for perjury. He refused to resign his judgeship. So he was still a judge, but he was also actually in prison.
He was the original Judge Samuel Kent, who later did the same thing.
Yeah, exactly, Ruchit. So, so Judge Nixon was impeached by the House, and he was convicted by the Senate. And he appealed a minor procedural issue, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court. He was like, "Hey, the Senate did this little procedural thing, and I hate it." And you know what the Supreme Court said? Any guesses?
No, what?
The court said, "I don't care." The court was like, "That's a political question," which is a code word for stuff the court doesn't want to deal with. So basically, almost everything procedurally that has to do with impeachment is not reviewable by the Supreme Court. The House has the sole power of impeachment. So basically, the House is the body that has the sole power of deciding what is a high crime and misdemeanor.
So should I think of impeachment as similar to like an indictment in the sense that I guess there's not really burdens of proof or things like that, but the House is basically like the indicting body if it was like a criminal trial.
It's like really similar to like a criminal indictment.
And the Senate is effectively like sort of the jury.
The court and the jury.
Yeah. But if it's the president, you get a judge too. You get the Supreme Court, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court.
Can I ask you guys about Bill Clinton now?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, let's do it. Let's do Bill Clinton.
So did Bill Clinton put on his own witnesses before the Senate?
Yeah,
I think so. I think there was
who are the witnesses?
Well, here. Witnesses. I'm just using Google Tom instead of asking it aloud into the podcast.
It's easier to ask it aloud into the podcast.
Oh my god. I'm actually using hold on. Impeachment of Bill Clinton. Let's see. Witnesses.
Oh. Apparently people were selling tickets to the Clinton impeachment. You could have bought tickets.
I did not get tickets.
Oh, interesting. So the Senate trial began on January 7th, 1999. The Chief Justice of the United States, William Rehnquist, was presiding. And 13 House Republicans from the Judiciary Committee served as managers, the equivalent of prosecutors.
Oh my God.
Wow. And Lincoln had Clinton had a big trial team. This is cool. There was like a 3-day trial.
Over 3 days, February 1 through 3rd, House managers took videotape closed-door depositions from Monica Lewinsky, Clinton's friend Vernon Jordan, and Sidney Blumenthal. Then the Senate decided by a vote of 70-30 that excerpting these videotapes would suffice as testimony rather than calling live witnesses. I'm reading Wikipedia now. So Tom asked a question, and I Googled it, and now I'm reading Wikipedia into the podcast. Was it good? Was it good?
The perjury charge, which was brought against Bill Clinton as part of the articles of impeachment, was defeated with 45 votes to convict and 55 against. That is crazy.
So Clinton, there were actually 2 articles of impeachment against Clinton. The first was perjury, and the second was obstruction of justice. And Bill Clinton was not convicted on either count. The vote was almost totally party line. On the perjury charge, it was exactly party line. Every single, I think, it was 55-45 to not guilty of the perjury charge. And then it was 50 votes to 50 votes that Clinton was not guilty of obstruction of justice. So this is like pretty crazy. He almost certainly perjured himself in a deposition, right? So the question wasn't like, did he do it? And in fact, it's pretty fair to say that like a majority of the Senate actually did think Clinton perjured himself. But he still got to be president. So that's like a real good lesson for children.
He got to remain president, I mean, at this point, he had been in office for, 7 years, I guess, because this was in, January 1999 was when all this began. And it's amazing. So, like, let's talk about some of the people that voted guilty when they were confronted with these charges. There was a young man from Alabama who was a senator at the time. His name was Jeff Sessions.
Susan Collins voted not guilty.
Wow, good for her.
Wow, McCain voted guilty and guilty.
Yeah, McCain is a partisan hack. We've talked about this on the show.
We had an entire episode
episode about what a partisan hack McCain is. And now you're like pretending to be surprised that he voted guilty.
I am surprised.
Well, that's because Ruchit recently turned his remember everything Ruchit said about McCain in that episode?
I've withdrawn. I've withdrawn all positive.
He completely changed his mind.
I've withdrawn all positive things that I previously said about John McCain, including a blog post I wrote in 2004 suggesting that John McCain run for president.
I can't wait for you to get to that point about Paul Ryan, dude.
Oh, I'm already at that point about Paul Ryan. The minute Paul Ryan endorsed Donald Trump, I was like, you've lost all credibility.
Just the other day in the Slack, you were going on about how great Paul Ryan was.
No, I wasn't, dude. Come on.
Yeah, dude, you were.
No, I wasn't.
Don't lie about it.
Dude, I wasn't.
Okay. Do we talk about some other impeachments? Are there any other interesting impeachments you want to do? Do you want to do Andrew Johnson?
So, let's talk about Andrew Johnson. So, okay, Andrew Johnson, for people that may not be familiar, was president of the United States well, actually, he was vice president of the United States. Then Abraham Lincoln, probably our greatest president, was shot and killed, assassinated. And Andrew Johnson became president.
So in Lincoln's first election, he ran as a Republican. In his second election, they actually formed a unity ticket. They called themselves like the Union Party. And what they found basically the only Democrat in all of DC that like hadn't gone back to the Confederacy during the war. Andrew Johnson was a senator, and he actually like stayed in DC and tried to participate in the federal government, even though his state had seceded. So Johnson,
was he representing his state?
I don't. Yeah, I think so. So Johnson,
even though his state has seceded.
Yeah. So like Johnson
he was a man
was,
without country, Tom.
Johnson was pro-union, but in every other respect, a huge racist. And principally speaking, you would consider him a Democrat more than you would consider him a Republican, even though he was a Republican, Lincoln's running mate as a Republican. So anyway, this guy who was never supposed to be president, and he's like super racist and ill-tempered, is president now. And the congressional Republicans had huge majorities in the Congress, in particular because at the end of the Civil War, there were still several states that weren't allowed to seat their members in Congress. They weren't officially folded back into the Union. And so there are huge Republican majorities in Congress, and they wanted to carry out Reconstruction in the South. And Andrew Johnson was a huge racist. And so congressional Republicans were passed a act called the Tenure of Office Act, specifically to goad Johnson. So what it said is that removing certain federal officers required consent to the Senate. And Johnson was like, this is dumb. I'm just going to remove people anyway. And then the House impeached him. So they were like, hey, it was all set up, right? Like, it was particularly designed to lead to an impeachment. And then Johnson was like, okay, that's fine, try impeaching me. This is really funny. 40 or 50 years later in Myers v. US, the Tenure of Office Act was actually ruled unconstitutional and struck down. So the thing that Johnson got impeached over in the first place wasn't constitutional, which I think is funny.
When the court rules something isn't constitutional, right? That's retroactive.
Yeah, so technically Johnson was never impeached. No, I'm just kidding. So impeachment, in that Nixon v. U.S. case, right? The thing that the court said was that impeachment is a purely political question. So even if you impeach someone and the thing that you charge them with was violation of some unconstitutional law, even if that law is unconstitutional, it's probably still a valid impeachment. It's probably still a political question that the court just doesn't want to deal with.
And I think that's right, because Congress is, it's interesting because there's a couple of different ways to remove a president, right? One is impeachment. The other way is the 25th Amendment, which will obviously be a separate episode. But the courts don't want to get in the way of what basically an elected official dispute, right? I mean, you're having this dispute between Congress and the president. And, Congress is elected, at large by the people. And I don't know, it kind of makes sense in this very extreme circumstance that that it should be Congress and it shouldn't be something that the courts can really review. I mean, I'm typically for letting everybody in the courthouse door. So, but even I can see the wisdom in this one.
Yeah. So, and then here's the funny thing. Johnson avoided conviction by a single vote. There was a single Republican who crossed the aisle to so Johnson would avoid conviction, and then everybody hated that guy forever. I think his name was Ross, right?
I don't know. I think the Johnson impeachment was sort of like the Bill Clinton impeachment, in which it was largely. It felt like basically members of the opposing party.
It felt like you were there.
Yeah, I mean, to me, at the time in the 1860s, it was weird being an Indian guy in the 1860s in the United States. Let me just tell you, but it felt like Johnson was being removed, purely because they just didn't like him and they didn't like his politics, as opposed to he did a bunch of really illegal things, right? And I think that was kind of similar to Clinton, right? Almost there's crimes we're okay with, little bullshit, and then there's stuff that's a really big deal. And I think the really big deal impeachment, which never happened, I guess, but would have happened, was Richard Nixon. Maybe that's a good segue to Richard Nixon.
So actually, of these, I mean, I like glossed over Johnson and Clinton pretty quickly because I think they're actually not that interesting in the scheme of things.
Yeah,
and Richard's right; they both are like pretty similar in that they're these like bizarre episodes. Richard Nixon is really interesting. So Richard Nixon,
I want to disclose something about my feelings towards Richard Nixon.
Oh God, Richard's about to say something embarrassing.
Oh my gosh, you're a fan, aren't you?
No, dude.
He was John McCain before John McCain was John McCain. Is that what you're about to say?
No, dude. I am a fan of Richard Nixon.
Oh my God.
Oh my gosh.
I am, dude. I think, he created the EPA. I like the EPA.
Sorry. Was it the war crimes in South Asia that you're a fan of, or sorry, was it the rampant racism?
Well, I mean, listen, that was I was a fan of the opening to China, which I think was a brilliant foreign policy maneuver and very, very important for us and for China. Arguably, Nixon's move to do an opening to China brought, 1 billion people out of poverty. So that's kind of a big deal. It helped end the Cold War by creating a wedge between China and Russia. So these were things, a lot of times, when presidents do things, whether it's really stupid things or smart things, the effects of those things are probably not felt for a decade, maybe even 2 decades. I think it's probably especially true on foreign policy. I mean, what Bush did, we're feeling the effects of that now, right? To a greater extent than we were even then.
You know who felt the effects of Nixon's presidency right away? Like Cambodia.
Yeah.
Like they were like it didn't take like 2 decades to find out that like Richard Nixon bombed them illegally. Like they were there, they got bombed.
Yeah, I mean LBJ wasn't great on that either, right? I mean he's the one that he falsely started the war in Vietnam under false pretenses to begin with, right? And I'm an LBJ fan too.
We're not.
The Gulf of Tonkin resolution,
the Gulf of Tonkin resolution didn't start the Vietnam War.
No, it did. What are you talking about? It was a low boil before the Gulf of Tonkin resolution. It was like one of the dozens of conflicts that the United States was involved in where, we send a little bit of arms, we send a few thousand, a few hundred military advisors, and then the Gulf of Tonkin resolution really, really got that thing going. It turned it into a full-blown war. But that's neither here nor there. I suppose it's really just that I think Nixon gets a bad rap sometimes. But he did do some bad stuff, and maybe we can talk about that.
He was also racist.
Yeah, he was.
Okay, so Richard Nixon was also very racist. Anyway, Richard Nixon resigned before he was actually impeached. That's interesting. Can you think of anyone else who's kind of noteworthy for having resigned before he was impeached?
Depending on when this podcast airs, Donald Trump.
That's true.
He's not resigning before
he's. It's May 18th at 8:40 p.m. and Donald Trump has not only resigned the presidency, but he also has resigned Vice Pence's vice presidency. He was just like, oh, by the way, also Mike Pence isn't the vice president. It was a very strange letter. It was a tweet. Okay.
It was something like, and Mike Pence told me 3 separate times that he no longer wants to be president.
So I think everybody sort of understands conceptually what Watergate is. I think it's sort of pretty famous. It was a hotel in Washington. The Democratic National Committee had some office space there. I don't know if a lot of people know the real details of the background on it, and I'm going to recommend a really good book on this by Rick Perlstein.
What book is that?
It's called Nixon Land. I read this about a year ago. It came out in 2009. Rick Perlstein has a trilogy of books. His main study focus of study is on sort of the transition from LBJ to neoconservatism in the 80s. And the question is just what happened? How did LBJ go from one of the most crushing electoral wins ever to, I guess, everything that happened after that. And so there's a series of 3 books, and I've read 2 of them. So there's one on Goldwater, one on Nixon, and one on Reagan. And the Nixon book and the Reagan book are extremely good. So the Nixon one is called Nixon Land. And if you want a really sort of a page turning, pretty pretty well paced out and exciting to read background on Watergate. It's actually very good. The very, very, very fine details. Do you know what the plumbers are? This is like a good quiz. This is a good quiz. Tom, who are the plumbers?
I do not know.
This may be familiar to you. So Richard Nixon was very concerned about leaks, people leaking to the press from his administration. And so they formed a group to find leakers. And it was called the Plumbers. And the Plumbers started carrying out a bunch of just like clandestine political operations. People who were sort of around this at the time were people like Roger Stone, who his name keeps popping up. So Roger Stone is one of the original rat fuckers. Are you familiar with the term rat fucking?
No.
Okay. Rat fucking is a term of art. It originated in USC, the University of Southern California, in like, I think in like the early 60s. And so rat fucking is a term of art for sort of nefarious political operations. So it started just like, that's just how rough and tumble USC's student government was in the 60s. But like one of my like favorite examples of rat fucking in history is Nixon like really meddled in the 1972 primary. He sent people out to screw with all of the candidates, because in particular he wanted to run against McGovern. So he screwed with everyone else. And one of the things he did is he would send out like mailers to people in a town, like, hey, whoever it is, like Ted Kennedy is having like a pizza party in your town. It's like a meet and greet because he's running for president. Like, everybody come say hi to Ted Kennedy. And it would be like totally fake. So people would like show up and there wouldn't be any like Kennedy campaign there.
Or pizza,
like,
for that matter.
What the hell's going on? Like, why did Kennedy ditch us?
Was there pizza?
Where's the pizza? There wouldn't be pizza either.
Yeah, well, they didn't have pizza in 1972.
So-
it wasn't invented yet.
So
That's how you win a political campaign.
So on this point, like Roger Stone, if you guys haven't seen that documentary on Netflix called "Get Me, Roger Stone,"
I want to watch it.
It's a really good documentary. But one of the things that the documentary points out is the Nixon campaign had Stone go to a competitor's campaign with just a bunch of money in like nickels and dimes and say to the competitor, hey, this is from the socialist organization of America, like Socialist College Students of America or something like that. And Stone went and with this money and donated it to this rival campaign and got a receipt, and they leaked the receipt to a local newspaper. And so this is like the type of stuff that Nixon would do.
Later in Roger Stone's career, he would help coordinate between the Trump campaign and WikiLeaks. Probably.
And Russia.
Beep, 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 beep. Roger Stone, just coming in over the wire, isn't even an officer of the United States, and he's been impeached.
Another really good book, if you're like into Watergate or really want to learn about it, is All the President's Men, which was a book that was written by Woodward and Bernstein, who broke the Watergate stories.
Yeah. So the plumbers. This is actually interesting. They break into the Watergate Hotel, and there are like a bunch of like CIA trained Cubans who were just like hanging around DC. They were like Cuban nationals, but they had been trained by the CIA as part of like, partly as part of like the Bay of Pigs and like other
Apparently
stuff.
not trained very well.
So it's like so you've got like some like Nixon staffers, like people actually on the White House payroll, and then cash under the table they're paying these like Cuban CIA trained Cuban nationals to help them, and so they like break into the Watergate Hotel, and they as they were breaking in, every time one of them would pick a lock, what they would do is take some tape and stick it over the door lock so that they could close the door without it locking again. And they basically dummied all of the locks from down the hallway to get to the DNC office. And then they did what they were doing. They rifled through whatever they were doing. And then when they left, there was a door lock and they forgot to take the tape off. And so a janitor noticed within a couple hours, a janitor noticed that this door was messed up, and he was like, "Oh, like this isn't good. Like this didn't happen accidentally. I bet some Cubans did it." And so these some of these CIA trained Cubans got arrested, and Woodward and Bernstein were as Ruchit was saying, they're the journalists that broke the Watergate story. These guys were real slackers. These were not people who were stars of the Washington Post, and they were just on the petty city crime beat. So this guy was just milling around the courthouse in case anything interesting happened. And suddenly these CIA trained Cubans were arraigned, and he somehow one of them told him that they were CIA, or I think one of them told the judge that they were CIA, and Woodward and Bernstein this is screwed up. What are a bunch of CIA people doing getting arraigned all at once for some bizarre burglary?
And I think what's really funny about this entire situation, one of the things that's really funny about the Watergate situation is the level of sheer incompetence, right?
Yeah.
Here you have the president of the United States. He's got the power of the presidency. He can do whatever he wants in terms of dirty tricks. And, they're hiring a bunch of also-ran spies, and these spies just can't get their shit together, number one. The way that they're paying these spies is fairly traceable. You have these, what are at the time second or third rate reporters, are able to figure this stuff out. And they're able to bring down a president, right? And that just goes to, it's kind of a beautiful thing, right? I don't know. It's just how were they not better than this, I guess, is my question.
Ron Ziegler, the White House press secretary at the time, famously called Watergate break-in a third-rate burglary.
He was right about that. He was telling the truth.
So this might also be a familiar episode to you. I don't know if this sounds like current events to you at all. On October 20th, 1973, something happened called the Saturday Night Massacre. So
you're previewing the future right now, AJ, by using the past.
In October 20th, 1973, by now there's actually, so May of 1973, there's a special prosecutor appointed. Almost exactly, the Trump special prosecutor was appointed almost exactly on the anniversary of the appointment of Archibald Cox to be the Watergate special prosecutor. And so he subpoenaed what have now come to be called the Watergate tapes. So he told the Nixon administration, someone told me you have a tape recording system in the White House. I want to hear the tapes. And Nixon had been trying to work out a compromise where he wouldn't have to turn over the tapes. At one point, he said, "Hey, there's this one senator, Stennis. Why don't we turn the tapes over to him? He'll listen to them and he'll let you know if there's anything interesting." Do you want to know the punchline?
What's the punchline?
Stennis was famous for being incredibly hard of hearing. Okay, so this is going on, and then Nixon tells the Attorney General Elliot Richardson to fire Archibald Cox. And Richardson refused. Nixon says, "You got to do it." And Richardson resigns. And so hours later in the same day, Nixon goes to the deputy AG and he says, "William Rickleshouse, I want you to fire Cox." And Rickleshouse resigns. He says, "I'm not going to do it." So the next in line in command is the Solicitor General. Can you guess who the Solicitor General was at the time?
Did his name start with a B and end with an orc?
Yeah. What's in the middle of that? What comes between B and orc?
York?
Yeah. Bjork York. That's who it was. Robert Bjork Ork. Ruch, now you guess. Do you think it was Robert Bork?
I think Ruchit left the chat.
Oh my god. Ruchit's peeing. He wrote, "Be right back. Need to pee." Oh my god. Oh, Ruchit's in the Slack complaining about his headphones. Oh my god. Okay. Well, I'll just keep talking. Robert Bork did it. He agreed to fire Archibald Cox. And then later, Robert Bork came and ruined Ruchit's headphones.
There's only one of the three of us that has constant technology problems.
Is it Ruchit?
I don't want to,
dude.
I don't want to blame the user,
dude.
But
Ruchit.
I want to blame Ruchit for this.
What are you talking about? I'm here. I'm talking.
Ruch. Okay.
Ruch, we asked you several questions in the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, you got all of them wrong.
Have you guys not been following the Slack?
No, we've been trying to do the podcast.
But you don't
Okay.
look at the Slack? That's where we have our messages.
Ruchit. Okay. Saturday Night Massacre.
Yeah.
Right? The Attorney General resigns. The Deputy Attorney General resigns. Why? Because they refuse to fire the special prosecutor. So Richard Nixon finds someone who's willing to fire the special prosecutor and interfere in the investigation. Can you name that person?
Oh, yeah. Because I was talking about this with some people earlier this week, and it was someone that I could not name, but I will name now. Robert Bork.
Yeah.
York.
Yeah, Tom doesn't quite pronounce it the same way you do. Okay, so here's another piece of trivia. Eventually, they had to name another special prosecutor. It was very embarrassing. The Saturday Night Massacre was very embarrassing. It didn't look good for Nixon. It sort of looked about as good for Nixon as firing Comey looks for Trump.
You know, and I think there are some interesting parallels here, but I don't think we're there yet. I think we have an incompetent crime, right? Potential crime. So, you know, some of the stupid shit that Michael Flynn did, and then Trump, you know, trying to cover it up, trying to encourage James Comey to not, you know, continue going after Michael Flynn. Then you have, of course, Trump firing James Comey and saying that he had Russia on his mind when he did it.
I think Trump has admitted to Lester Holt on TV that he obstructed justice.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's going to be really hard for him. I mean, he said, you know, I thought, you know, I was going to – I mean, we need to read the quote. Did we read the quote last week?
We played the quote. Do you listen to the podcast?
How did you play the actual quote?
I know, right? I know.
Wow, dude. I can't believe you put Donald Trump on our podcast.
I know, right? Okay, so the Judiciary Committee approved articles of impeachment for Richard Nixon. It didn't make it to the House before Richard Nixon resigned, but they actually did approve 3 articles of impeachment. So I'm going to name there were 5 articles that they voted on. 3 of them they voted to recommend to the House. 2 of them they voted not to recommend to the House. So I'm going to read all 5, and you tell me which 3 you think it was. Obstruction of justice, abuse of power, contempt of Congress, tax evasion, and illegally bombing Cambodia.
They let him off the hook on Cambodia.
They let him off the hook on Cambodia.
Cambodia is not one. I'm pretty sure it's obstruction of justice, right? What was the second one?
Abuse of power.
Abuse of power. And what was the third one?
Contempt of Congress. And the fourth
I think
one
it's
was
the first
tax
3.
evasion.
I think it's the first 3.
Yeah, you're right. But the reason why the tax evasion one is interesting to me actually is that Richard Nixon is the one who sort of started the tradition of publicly releasing your tax returns because there had been suggestions of tax evasion. And actually earlier the vice president had resigned for tax evasion.
That's right. Spiro Agnew was the vice president at the time, and that's what made Gerald Ford the vice president. And Gerald Ford was an unassuming Midwestern congressman that nobody had reason to suspect of anything. Sound familiar?
Well, except, you know.
Oh, it sounds like Paul Ryan.
No, dude. That's Mike Pence.
Oh, it's Carl Levin, an unassuming Michigan member of Congress. It's Carl Levin.
Yes, you're right.
I've got one. An unassuming member of the House of Representatives from a large Midwestern state. John Kasich.
Dennis Kucinich.
Wait, I got one. Are you ready? Chuck Grassley. Ruchit, are you ready?
I'm ready,
This
dude.
is going to be the best one.
I'm ready.
An unassuming and, by all reputations, incredibly stupid Midwestern member of Congress. Are you ready? Ron Johnson.
Or John Thune. John Thune would be another one.
Okay,
we're just naming people that are currently elected at this point.
So here's the real kicker on the Spiro Agnew story. He actually pled guilty to a crime after he resigned the vice presidency. So they got him for accepting bribes, But the thing he pled guilty to was not reporting the federal income tax that he would have owed on the bribe income.
Nice.
So maybe it's helpful now to bring it to current events for a moment. And so, there's been a special counsel named. They've been calling him a special prosecutor, but I don't think he is a special prosecutor. Is he? Do you guys have any clarity on that? On whether Robert Mueller is considered a special prosecutor or a special counsel, or is that the same thing?
In the sense that he has prosecutorial powers?
I thought for some reason being a special prosecutor, you had like way crazy wide authority and you couldn't be fired.
It's almost like I typed a bunch of stuff into our Slack on this very topic, including citing the Code of Federal Regulation that laid out Mueller's jurisdiction.
Yeah. Don't you remember that?
That's why I'm asking you about it, dude.
So, the interesting thing about this, right?
Yeah.
Who would know better than you, AJ? You put a bunch of things in the Slack about it.
Okay, so
everyone check the Slack.
So here's what I think we ought to do. Everyone check our Slack. Let's talk a little bit about this Trump special prosecutor, and then Trump has his favorite impeachment story. Tom has his favorite impeachment story, and then we can do sidebar. What do you think?
All right, let's do it.
Okay, so there's a special counsel now appointed for Trump.
Yeah, it's
so and AJ, when you were dropping all of those knowledge bombs about the special counsel, the one thing that I found that was interesting was that a lot of folks have been saying, well, look, this is it's not as good as an independent prosecutor because the special counsels can I believe it's the attorney general still has veto power over the special counsel's decisions.
Yeah.
Right. The one check I saw on that in the regulations that you posted was that if the attorney general asks the special counsel for whatever he's doing in the investigation, the special counsel has to tell the attorney general. And if the attorney general decides that it's in the best interest of the United States that the special counsel not pursue that line of investigation, the attorney general can order the special counsel not to do it. But if the attorney general orders the special counsel not to take some action, then the attorney general has to report that to Congress, which I presumably would be public. Like he can't just privately report it to Congress, right?
So
I think that's a pretty effective check on Sessions, not ordering this special counsel to do something or not to do something, because if he does, he'd have to tell Congress that, and that would be public.
Yeah, I think the other thing is I think no one is going to, as a practical matter, going to be able to order this special counsel to do things or not do things. The special counsel is Robert Mueller, who was director of the FBI and
for 12 years.
Yeah, for 12 years. I mean, he was the only FBI director since Hoover, I think, to be in office more than 10 years.
So Mueller,
kind of crazy.
So Mueller was head of the FBI during the Bush wiretapping episode. Bush was illegally wiretapping some people, and Mueller was head of the FBI, and he was like, "Bush, you got to stop." And this is like bubbling up in the Justice Department, and Ashcroft, the Attorney General, was like very ill. He was very ill, and he was in the hospital. And so the Deputy Attorney General was executing the office of the Attorney General during this episode. And so Bush said, "I want to keep doing these illegal wiretaps."
Really, Cheney wanted to keep doing it.
Well, yeah. The Deputy Attorney General was like, "No, I'm not going to do it." And the FBI Director was like, "No, I'm going to back up the Deputy AG." Who was that Deputy AG?
Jim Comey.
Who?
Jim Comey.
Who's that?
Jim Comey is the recently fired FBI director.
He's the linchpin. He's the linchpin of the whole thing. Okay, so there is a special prosecutor, or a special counsel is the term used in the regulations, appointed for the Russia investigation. And so if you want to read the regulations that pertain to special counsel, it's Title 28, Part 600 of the Code of Federal Regulations, 28 CFR Part 600. And so
also in the show notes, most likely.
So the Rod Rosenstein is the Deputy AG, and he because Jeff Sessions has recused himself from the Russia investigation on the grounds of being guilty as hell. He, Rod Rosenstein is the Attorney General for the purposes of the Russia investigation, and so he wrote a letter to Miller, and he said, under Title 28, Part 600, you're the special counsel, and here is your jurisdiction. Your job is to, 1, investigate the investigation regarding Russian interference in the election as disclosed by James Comey to Congress on such and such date in March. And then the second thing is any other matters that arise from that investigation. And then the third thing that Mueller has jurisdiction over is anything listed in Title 28, Section 600.4A. And so 600.4 sets out the original jurisdiction of the special counsel. And it says the jurisdiction of a special counsel shall also include the authority to investigate and prosecute federal crimes committed in the course of and with intent to interfere with the special counsel's investigation, such as perjury, obstruction of justice, destruction of evidence, and intimidation of witnesses. It's pretty dope.
It's a lot of authority. A lot of authority.
Yeah. So the special counsel has a large amount of authority to investigate this Russia situation. As Tom was getting at, this is different from an independent commission. It's not something that's been established by Congress. It's not something that is under the direct review of Congress. The special counsel still reports to the Attorney General, or in this case, the acting Attorney General. And the Attorney General can still, if the special counsel wants to pursue a certain line of investigation, Rod Rosenstein could say, no, thank you. And then on the upside, if the Attorney General countermands an order or a prerogative of the special counsel, Congress has to be informed.
And AJ, is it true that he has to set out the specific reasons why he doesn't want that order or that action to be taken?
Yes.
So does he have to tell that to Congress as well?
That I'm not sure. I think it doesn't really quite define that, but I think I just feel like, famous last words, but I think there's two people that cannot be fired without bringing down the Trump administration. One is Bob Mueller, and the second is Rod Rosenstein. And if you're Rod Rosenstein, at this point, after Trump drug you through the mud last week, you probably are just, you're probably staying out of it. Another interesting thing happened today, not to get too current events, but this is on May 18th. Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, briefed the entire Senate in a room called the SCIF. It's the Senate Conference Intelligence Facility or something like that. It is a highly secure room that is completely classified and shut off from the world that's in the Senate chamber. It's where they're supposed to go if the nation is under attack.
I thought that was in the Eastern District of Virginia.
I don't know. I think if they're in the actual if they're actually in Congress and the nation is under attack or something like that, I think this is the secure, highly classified room, and it's big enough to hold all 100 members of the Senate.
Yeah. So I don't know why Rosenstein wanted to brief them in the classified room. I assume it's because they went over classified material, but who knows? The whole thing's pretty bizarre.
Yeah. I just wonder if you can only imagine what he was telling them in there. So this is we're definitely living through one of the most interesting times in American history, I think, from a constitutional and legal perspective.
It's almost like Trump is bad. It's almost I
think it's a little worse than that.
It might be that others are bad as well.
Yeah.
I wish there was someone before the election that had warned us that Trump was bad.
Like me. I did. I told everyone who would listen.
Yeah. I wish there was someone else, though.
No one listens to you, AJ.
So
we didn't have a podcast back then, so you just didn't have the audience that you have now,
That is everything we know about impeachment.
We were so concerned about emails.
Is there anything else that we know about impeachment? Tom, you want to tell your Judge Kent story?
I told it at the beginning of this episode.
Oh, screw me. All right, I'll edit it in so that now it's later in the episode, even though you said it earlier in time.
We can do sidebars.
Let's do. I'll make the Ken thing the after show. Let's do sidebars, and then I'll drop in the thing you told the Ken thing. Okay.
So, can I do my sidebar?
Yeah.
So my sidebar, and maybe this is a little late because I think a lot of people have maybe read this Atlantic story called "My Family's Slave" by Alex Treason. Have you guys read this?
I read the first half. It was so long.
I have not read this because it looks very, very depressing.
Yeah, it's a long story and it's very, very sad. Treason is a man, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but he won a 1997 Pulitzer Prize for investigative reporting, and he wrote this. He wrote this story about titled "My Family's Slave," and he died days before publishing this story. A lot of people may have read this story. It's basically about this Filipino woman who served 3 generations of his family basically as a slave. Like, she wasn't paid. She just was taken in as a euphemism by his grandfather and told to work for his mother and then for his family for 3 generations. And the story itself is just, it's a read. You have to read it. It's very sad. Particularly the latter half of the story, which AJ has not gotten to, where he discusses what happens when this woman named Lola moves in with his own family, the writer's family. The other thing that was interesting about this story is that there were several Twitter threads, reactions to this story by Filipinos that just are interesting reads that I thought. And then the second interesting part is Lola's obituary. So after Lola died, Lola had been living with Treason up until her death. There was an obituary published in the Seattle Times which had statements contradicting the Atlantic story. So, for example, in the Atlantic story, Treason comes out and says that she was a slave and she wasn't paid and all this stuff. In the obituary, Treason had told the writer of the obituary that she asked for nothing in return, said her grandson Alex Treason, and that she had been taken in by his grandfather who needed someone to look after his mother. So it's just got so many of these dimensions and nooks and crannies to delve into. But of course, the Seattle Times later published a response to the Atlantic story, which is also worth reading because you can tell the anger in the Seattle Times obituary writer's article about Treason lying to her about this story. It is one of the most powerful stories I've read in a while, and in many ways, and I can't describe it adequately on this podcast other than to tell you to go read this, all of it.
Tom, I think you made a really compelling case, dude. I may still not read it, but
oh my gosh,
I'm just being an idiot. I probably will read it now that you've recommended it so highly. But I suspected it would be highly emotional and highly good, and there's only
it's just no. There are several layers to the story. Not just taking a blind faith what Treason is telling, but also looking, reading in between the lines. You can really tell that Treason is sort of guilt-ridden about the entire affair, and then beyond that about just the culture and the society and what's the United States role in all of this, and there's just a lot to digest.
Rich, what do you got?
So mine is not anywhere near as good as Tom's, and I can't speak about it with the kind of passion that Tom just spoke about his. So I'm going to sidebar this, but I'm going to highly recommend that if you have limited amounts of time to read, you read what Tom said instead of reading what I have to say. But this is an article in Politico called "What Trump Should Know About James Comey and Bob Mueller." And the gist of the article is that Comey and Mueller have been preparing for this moment their entire lives, which is they've lived lives of honor and dignity, and they've served their country, and they've already stood up to one president, and they've been training for it. They're ready to do this, and I think one of the things that the article doesn't say, which maybe it should, is that Trump has been preparing for this his entire life too. He's been conning, contractors. He's been not paying his creditors. He's basically spent 40 years, conning a lot of people and getting away with it. And so this is the great con. Can Trump get away with this too? This is a great kind of good versus evil type of story. And it's being written as we speak. So
look forward to the outcome of that.
Yeah. Breaking news. No, I'm kidding. There's no breaking news.
Beep, 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 coming in over the wire. Beep, 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 beep. Paul Ryan has been impeached.
It's interesting though with Paul Ryan here because he basically said that people should not discuss the fact that the House Majority Leader, his colleague Kevin McCarthy, thought that Trump was being paid by the Russians. That was pretty crazy. That's some real party over country type shit.
My sidebar is very good.
What is it?
This is an article from the AV Club. I actually read this about a month ago, but I've had other sidebars in the meantime. And the title of the article is Yola Tango and David Cross Barely Remember Sugar Cube 20 years later. So basically, Yola Tango is a band. They've been around for like a million years by this point. And in the 1990s, they had a single called Sugar Cube, and they made a music video for it. And, two totally unknown, obscure comedians sort of helped do the video, and they started it. And their names were David Cross and Bob Odenkirk. So like these people are like now like extremely famous, right? Like Bob Odenkirk was on Breaking Bad, and he's now the title character of Better Call Saul,
which is amazing. By the way,
very good, highly recommend. David Cross is probably most famous at this point for being Tobias Funke on Arrested Development.
Oh, that's that David Cross.
That David Cross.
Yeah, that David Cross.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So there's the music video itself. I actually highly recommend you watch. It's embedded in the AV Club article, but it's basically the band is trying to record a music video, and the record label guy says, your music video sucks. We're sending you to rock school. And so Bob Odenkirk and David Cross are the professors at rock school, and they're wearing like outrageous makeup, and they like make a lot of jokes about they make a lot of jokes about like tropes or music, and there's some good like references to people who are like who are up to speed on sort of classic rock from like the 70s and 80s. So anyway, this writer for the AV Club was like, oh, like Sugar Cube was sort of an amazing moment in my life. It was really influential on me as a child. It sort of helped me think about the world and entertainment and whatever. And so he tracked down the director of the video, this guy, Morrison, and he tracked down David Cross and Bob Odenkirk. And he tried to like talk to them about the music video. He was like, hey, like this was like really life-changing for me. I'm trying to write an article about this music video. Can you like talk to me about it? And David Cross and Bob Odenkirk were both like we recorded this over a day like 30 years ago. Like, I don't remember. Bob Odenkirk's like, I'm real busy. I'm sorry. I'm doing something else right now. I can't talk to you about this music video from the
AJ, did you ever watch Mr. Show with Bob and David?
Yeah, it's very good.
So that was like a collaboration that David Cross and Bob Odenkirk had, a sketch comedy show. I never really got into it, but I think my understanding is that it had a lot of really famous people, or now famous people, that took part in it, including like Jack Black and Sarah Silverman and was it Key or Peele? One of the two was on it.
So for me, the funniest part of the article is that this Sugar Cube music video wasn't even the only music video that David Cross did that year on exactly the same premise. So like, there's another band that he did like a substantially similar music video for that same year. So this AV Club guy is like, oh, this like really changed my life. This was like really important to me as a child. And everyone else is like, dude, like nobody remembers this thing you care about. Anyway, the article is like really good. It's sort of nice. it's nice. Like it's sort of there's some good music you can find if you like click on the YouTube, and the interviews are interesting, and it'll be nice. Oh, beep 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 coming in over the wire. Bob Odenkirk has been impeached. He's no longer in the Sugar Cube video. Wow.
He was impeached by the U.S. Senate.
Yeah. Oh God, Tom. Tom does this just to mess with me. Okay, so that's good. That's an episode. We did a whole episode.
That's a show.
Wow, we did a whole episode.
So, Ruchit, while you were like trying to figure out your technology, I was telling AJ about this crazy Samuel B. Kent case.
Okay.
So get this. This was a federal judge U.S. district judge out of Galveston.
Okay.
Right? And he was accused of sexually harassing his employees.
Oh, I think I remember this guy.
Yeah. Eventually what got him, what like convicted him was he lied to investigators, and so in 2009 he was sentenced to 33 months in prison for lying to investigators about sexually abusing 2 female employees, right? And Dick DeGuerin was his attorney.
Dude, I hope I never do anything bad, let alone get brought in on trumped up charges. But were anything really bad to happen, I hope I can afford Dick DeGuerin.
Yeah. So, but the crazy part is, right, he gets convicted, right, and he's sentenced to 33 months in prison, and he's like, I'm a federal judge. I'm not going to give up this $169,000 a year annual salary, right? I'm not going to resign, right? And that caused a lot of hubbub because like here he's like, I'm just going to do my job from prison.
Can you do that?
Why not?
Well, he's
got a lot of free time. I mean, it's not as if do you think he can't judge and, sit in prison and do whatever prison chores a prisoner is required to do?
Right. And if you think about it, right, like a lot of his job is criminal, right? And so this gives him a great empathy for the prisoners.
Yeah,
like the potential convicts.
This is firsthand experience with the criminal justice system.
Yeah. So, but the crazy part, right? He like just flat out refuses to resign. He's like, you guys are going to have to drag me out of this robe, kicking and screaming, right? So the House passes a resolution to impeach him. Okay, and they vote on basically 5 articles of impeachment, and basically everyone votes to impeach. Gets sent to the Senate.
Okay.
Right? And so this is what I found was like kind of hilarious. Like the Senate had to like personally serve this judge, right? Like it's like here we have a national impeachment trial going on in the United States Senate, right?
Did this get him out of jail? That's pretty cool. He got to go to the Senate?
He'd have to be there for his trial, right? So like the Senate like goes and personally serves him in prison and says, hey, you need to show up. And of course, when they like the turn in the story is when they serve him in prison, he serves the Senate the Senate guy a letter of resignation. And so the trial never happens because he resigned before they could try him in the Senate. But it's hilarious that this dude is like being served by the Senate for an impeachment trial, Do you think Bill Clinton got served?
He better have.
Time has no meaning in Donald Trump's America.
I'm like really tired of Donald Trump. Like, I'm really, really tired of him.
You guys have heard about the Trump productivity tax, right?
Oh yeah,
it's happening to me. It like totally
it's
happens.
definitely happening to me.
No,
no, but like news breaks like right when I'm in the middle of like writing a brief or something, and now suddenly like someone will like come into my office and be like, "You'll never guess what Trump said," and then that like a half an hour goes by where I like cannot concentrate on my brief.